up
So
on those.
now
Let's talk about the actual termination project here. There's actually a really good question in the Rottenberg article that we'll get to the rest of this, but it is an interesting question. How come NHL players or NHL teams, like we just did with Kolosov, can sign a player to a contract but then loan them to the KHL, but the KHL can't do the same thing? Like, I find that weird. And it was like a pretty good question.
Well,
in that article.
I mean, the reason is, generally speaking, is because you make more money in the NHL.
Okay.
I would think that you could theoretically do it.
You'd be, with the salary cap, because they'd still be playing under that. Okay.
Yeah. So it like
that might be a circumvention issue.
Exactly, because like I don't think Michkov makes enough for it even to be league minimum right now in the NHL. So that is a big part of it. Now, granted, if like, I don't know, if there was a guy making $8 million a year in Russia and they wanted to work out some sort of loan where maybe you could theoretically find a way to make that work under the CBA. That is not the situation, which is a good segue getting into the termination, because if the Flyers were to get Matvei Michkov, if Matvei Michkov does come over and the Flyers sign into an entry-level contract, before that happens, this is what everyone's waiting on, the contract with SKA would have to be terminated, and that is a legal process. Now, that is something that Rottenberg has hinted at a couple times over these last couple of days, that legal details need to be resolved. Presumably, those legal details are the legal termination under Russian law, which I guess is certainly much different than the United States law, but the legal termination of Matvei Michkov's contract, which would need to happen before the Flyers go into signing him to an entry-level contract. That is presumably what is happening right now. That negotiation is taking place. Now, the way this doesn't happen is if the negotiation goes south and that the two sides cannot agree on what is deemed to be fair compensation for the termination of the deal. Now, Hockey News Hub, the great Twitter account, believe Hockey News Hub is basically a Russian who lives in Canada, obviously still very familiar with the Russian language. So he is able to essentially quickly translate any news that comes out of Russia. So he tends to get it first because none of us hockey writers can actually read Russian. He reported that a buyout in terms of USD would cost about $400,000. I do not know if that is true, but he's given good information throughout this whole process, so I see little reason to believe that it isn't true. He's not getting paid a ton. This isn't like we're talking about, in theory,
the Fedotov issue,
an enormous amount of money. However, I would guess that there are probably other people in this process that need to be compensated. Whether that is under the table or above the table, I do not know. But this is not just as simple. Like, for example, it's very easy to buy out a contract in the NHL. There's a set process. There is something, negotiated by the CBA where it's like you get this much amount of money this year and this year and this year. It's an algorithm. It's all easy. You either want to do it or you don't. There's cap charges. Russia is a little bit different in the sense that there are probably a lot of people who want some sort of compensation for allowing Matvei Michkov to terminate his deal and go play over in North America. So while technically I believe that is probably all they have to buy him out of, my guess is there will be other things that have to be done. Now, whether the Flyers are involved in that at all, or whether the Flyers are allowing Michkov's camp to deal with all that, and then hey, we'll just work out an entry-level contract with you that has a lot of bonuses that you're almost certain to hit, so you can immediately pay that back. I'm not sure. But for this all to work out, the contract does have to be terminated. That will involve some sort of buyout and possibly some sort of other backroom Russian negotiation as well.
There was an exchange, I think, between Hockey News Hub and Kevin Kurz, where it was like both of them kind of saying there is kind of a guideline, but also literally everything is negotiable.
Right.
And I think there was some speculation on the Fedotov contract termination. Like, hey, there's a reason he got that money from the Flyers he got. It's because like he had to spend some money to get the hell out of his contract, and that
has always been my guess.
He's probably making about $3 million over like $3 million American in Russia, and then he comes, okay, we're gonna give him that plus a little bit more. Like, there might have been something to that. Like, one, he was never going to come if he's not going to make more.
Right.
Like, this whole thing's been a whole issue for him, and now, I'm going to go over there and take a huge pay cut. Like, that's fucking stupid.
I'd like to play in the NHL, but I don't want to play in the NHL that much. Uproot my life.
After everything that's happened to me, like, I'm not taking a pay cut, and then also, I gotta make back what I just gave whoever.
I wouldn't be shocked if that was a part of this.
Like, especially
there's a lot of people in this situation that are going to want some compensation for being involved in this.
Rottenberg in the interview talks about, like, and I don't know if he's alluding to, like, I'm going to need to get my beak wet a little here. But he's just saying, like, I've invested a lot of time and personal effort into, like, developing this player.
Yeah.
And
has he, though?
Yeah, well.
I mean, his investment was send him to Sochi because I don't like him.
Well, just sure. He's saying it doesn't make it true.
Fair.
But, I'm just, there's always, and this is getting back to the Briere of it all, like, this is why he's just not going to fucking interject.
Right.
Like, exactly. Any number of people could go, actually, he's not going anywhere. Yeah. So they're just going to kind of play that out. Yeah.
I think the Flyers are playing this as well as they can. We'll see how it works out. It does seem like the momentum is going in their favor, but I think the Flyers are doing everything they can to not inflame the situation. And if this is ultimately the way it works and the Flyers get Matvei Michkov, the Flyers probably were involved in some way, but they're never going to talk about it because why would they? They just won. And also, I mean, they have a good relationship with a big team in Russia, and they would have been able to get this highly touted prospect, a potential generational level prospect, out of there successfully. Hey, maybe in a couple years, they might need to do the same thing for another player that they draft. Like, it behooves them to keep a strong relationship with this team. Now, could this have ultimately gone bad and they would have had to find some sort of way to get him out, and get him on the Flyers by pissing off SKA? Sure, that was always a possibility, but it's always going to be better if you can find a way to do it where everybody's happy.
Yeah, like, all right, we'll get into it. Yeah, we have plenty of time this offseason and in the next few years, but, Zavragin's going to have to come over at some point.
Yeah.
Like, why piss everyone off when it seems as if the Flyers have a better relationship. They're using, like, a lot of capital on Russian players, maintain that relationship. But they're doing...
because he's with the SKA organization now.
Is it CSKA or SKA? I never know.
I believe it's SKA because I believe he would have the option to go to Sochi.
It was because we talked that they might be teammates. Yeah.
Exactly. And not only that, a lot of these owners, like, obviously they're competing with each other in the league,
pals,
but they're pals. Yeah, they're drinking vodka, up in the fucking... I'm blanking on a mountain range, but like some picturesque mountain range in Russia. They're all just hanging out, smoking cigars and drinking vodka and having the time of their lives being billionaires.
We all silly like the mayor.